Broadcast has started.
Here we go. The very first episode of Fantasy Football with the question mark with Charles Barr, casual football fan and brainchild fantasy analyst Jonathan Chapman.
What's up?
What's up? Today it's finally happened, John.
Man, we've been working on this for a long time, and so it's a lot of fun whenever you do all the notes and get all the everything questions and stuff set up, and whenever it finally comes together, man, it's like Christmas. Today's a great day.
It's like Christmas, but it's also like every other day because this is what we do every day. It's just for the first time we're going to record it and we're not going to cuss. So
Not gonna try to cuss. I might
Right.
slip a couple out, and we'll just kind of see how it goes.
Absolutely. But John, tell us a little bit about what this league is about and how it's a little bit different from other podcasts.
So basically, the idea is this: I'm an ex-football coach down in just outside of Dallas, and absolutely love football. I got out of coaching about 5 years ago, but I'm so addicted to watching film, I couldn't help it. So I watch film religiously. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And you get such a great perspective on this stuff. And I absolutely love fantasy and am beyond addicted. So I said, hey, man, let's put this together. And, you and me, we talk on the phone a little bit too much about
Right.
football and your Eagles, my 49ers. And we decided to take it to the next level. And so the idea is we are going to put a film based coaching approach to fantasy football. Obviously, we have lots of stats and metrics. But the idea is much more. I watch all of the plays. I watch every single game, and I break it all down. And so that's kind of what we're going to do is we're going to try to go a little bit deeper.
And you know what is interesting is that John and I are both Texas boys. We both played football in high school, and so that never gets out of your blood. But John's located in California, and I'm actually in the Chicago suburbs. So we're coming from you coast to kind of coast. So I think that there's something else that kind of differentiates us from other podcasts, and that's your method of your rankings. So maybe kind of take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I definitely do a tier-based approach ranking, which I know is not necessarily new. But what it does is it's basically brings an economic standpoint to who you're going to draft and where the value is. And so I know we're going to get into a lot of questions about quarterbacks and when to take them and why to wait and so on and so forth. But the idea is you want as many elite level prospects as you can. And so you want to take the focus off of, well, who's your number two versus your number three guy? And as we get into this conversation, you're going to figure out number two and number three, especially with running backs, are pretty much the same, which I have Le'Veon Bell number two, Ezekiel Elliott number three, David Johnson number one. But all those guys are in the same tier. And what happens is, as you move down the tiers, you figure out who you like more and who you don't like as much. And it really helps you grab value. And it really plays a big role later on because you can clearly see within positions which player you are absolutely in love with and where the value is and where it's not.
Right, because some guys get stuck in this sort of like ordinal, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they get caught waiting on one guy and screw up a whole round or two. When if they follow a tier model, it's a bit safer.
Exactly, and as you get into roster construction too, your first few picks are going to kind of be predicted based on where your draft is and kind of what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to go safer or more risky, and so if at the top end of your draft you've got lots of high-end, high-risk players, you're going to want to balance that out later on with safer guys that aren't going to be as high upside, but are going to be a lot safer, guys like Frank Gore, for instance. And so it really helps you balance out your roster so that your risk is minimalized. I think that's a word. And it's just a lot safer for the season.
So our foundation is set. Our listeners should understand basically kind of what we're doing. Let's get into the most important position group on a fantasy roster, running backs. Let's maybe go through, again, you kind of gave us a peek into that top tier. Let's go through some more of those rankings, though.
Okay, so number one, let me just get this off my chest. David Johnson, I mean, he is top-notch, the best player in fantasy. And if you have the 1-1, whether it's dynasty, whether it's redraft, best ball, it doesn't matter. It needs to be this guy. And if you look back at his stats from last year, David Johnson's stats are the equivalent of LaShawn McCoy's rushing statistics and DeAndre Hopkins' passing statistics. You put
Wow.
those together, and that's David Johnson.
It's unreal.
I mean, it doesn't even make sense. He had 6 games over 30 points. The next closest person had 3. 11 games over 20 points. He only had 1 game under 10 points, and that was week 17 when he got hurt. And week 17, guess what? Nobody plays. So didn't hurt any fantasy owners whatsoever. He's only 25 years old, and that entire offense is completely driven through him. So zero doubt, 101. I don't care what the format is, PPR standard. David Johnson's the guy.
Do you think that he's not talked about enough whenever you see NFL Network?
And so, like, you'll hear people say, well, Le'Veon Bell had a higher per-game average, and he did. But David Johnson doesn't have any of the risk that Le'Veon Bell has. Le'Veon Bell has had 2 season-ending injuries. He's been suspended twice. His next suspension will be a year long.
Wow.
And if you're looking at dynasty format, what's that offense going to look like when Big Ben retires, probably in the next year or two? Not to mention, Le'Veon Bell's playing under franchise tag this year. So long-term, you don't even know if he's going to be there. And I love Le'Veon Bell, but there is a little bit of a gap there. David Johnson is head and shoulders above that guy. Should be talked about a lot more.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk about David Johnson a little bit later, but let's go through the rest of these rankings and get the listeners an idea of who goes where.
Okay. So let's finish out just the elite tier. Le'Veon Bell, who I just talked about, 9 out of 12 games over 20 points. I mean, the guy is just legit. He didn't score near as many touchdowns as you would have thought. He only had 9 touchdowns, which is kind of on par for him. The last few years, he's had 8 touchdowns, 11, 3 touchdowns, and then 9 touchdowns. The year he only had 3, only played in 6 games, so you can't really fault him for that one. But he goes out. He does have the 2 big injuries. He's got the Liz Frank injury where he missed a lot of time, and he hyperextended his knee in the playoffs. And so he's torn his MCL. He's had a groin injury. It's a lot of stuff. But absolutely top-notch offensive line, and it's probably the most high-powered offense in the NFL because you can't stack the box because they got Antonio Brown and now Martavis Bryant. So he's going to put up some great numbers.
Sammy Coates, and I think they traded – they got themselves a tight end as well.
Well, they had the tight end. They signed gosh, what's his name off the top of my head? They signed him from San Diego, and they cut him. They went ahead and let him go. And so that didn't pan out.
Ladarius Green.
Ladarius Green. Sorry, thanks for the help. Yeah, so they let him go. They cut him. So they're rolling with Jesse James, who is not a bad spot start. He's basically going undrafted in most common leagues. So he's going to get targets. He really is. If you look at the games whenever he played, he's going to play. But, yeah, I mean, that's just such a beast league. And they drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, who I not super high on, but he's going to perform. So that's safe. That's super safe.
Yeah. So next is a guy I think is from Dallas, I'm guessing.
Oh, boy. Party Zeke.
He's the man.
He's in some trouble, too. Adam Schefter just tweeted out that he would not be surprised if suspension comes down on Ezekiel Elliott. He's got a couple things going on. One was his domestic abuse charge, which was cleared by the police, but the NFL has kept this on going for over a year now. He got some trouble during Mardi Gras in Dallas where it was the parade, and the girl next to him, who apparently he knew, he just reached over and lifted up her shirt and exposed all of the goodness. So there's some things there, but absolute monster. I mean, he led the NFL in rushing, 1,631 yards. The next closest guy was 300 yards behind him, and that's Jordan Howard. And he didn't even play in Week 17, so he could have kept going. Now, one thing I will say, he had 2 horrible games against the Giants. So you want to be careful for that. And he doesn't get as much catches, so PPR hurts him. But if you look at that offensive line, there are 3 All-Pros on that O-line. So he is going to have holes. Ron O'Leary went to Denver. Doug Free retired. Go ahead.
I said, can we talk about that line for a second?
What do you think about it, man? Where would you put it as far as the NFL goes? Do you think they're top notch?
I still say number 1. I was having this conversation actually with my dad and my brother today. because there's been a lot of offensive lines that have now crept up into that conversation. And, you got the Browns who made major improvements, the Raiders, but then don't forget also about the Titans. My God, those bookends, they're insane.
Yeah, I love the Titans, Tennessees, and Oaklands.
Yes.
PFF, Pro Football Focus, who I'll talk about a lot, just because I like the work that they do for most positions. But they ranked the upcoming offensive lines, and they put the Cowboys at 9, which was an absolute shock. I think they're definitely top 5. You have 3 All Pros out of the 5, but those guard spots, or at least one of the guard spots, with Jonathan Cooper. I mean, if the Browns cut you, I'm just going to be honest with you. Usually not pretty good. I guess the exception to the rule was Gabriel for the Falcons, but the Browns cut you. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something going on there.
Well, also too, Collins is now moving to right tackle, correct?
That's what they're going to try to do, which is going to be interesting. He's never played right tackle. He was left tackle at basically his entire career at LSU, and he played guard for the Cowboys last year. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a transition. It seems pretty easy going from left tackle to right tackle, but it's totally different. Your body basically has to readjust to every basic movement you do. It's a lot easier going from left tackle to left guard, but we'll see how it goes. I would love to have Leo Collins as my right tackle personally. I
Yeah.
think he's going to do great.
Yeah. Okay, so those are our elite guys. Let's go through this next tier.
All right, so the next tier, man, these are some great guys and guys that you absolutely want to have. And so I go through 4 through 8. So I have 4 is LaShawn McCoy, 5 DeMarco Murray, 6 Melvin Gordon, 7 Devontae Freeman, and number 8 Jay Ajayi.
Hmm.
And so, how do you feel about those guys?
So I guess one of my questions is Jay Ajayi too low? Because for me, maybe I have him a little bit higher. I think I would take him over Melvin Gordon for sure.
Okay. Well, if you look at it last year, I have him at number 8, but he finished last year as number 11. And so definitely the potential is there. And I totally understand that. And I get why everybody's so big on Ajayi. Great offensive line. I mean, that's awesome. But if you look at just his numbers from last year, he had 1 game over 30 points, 4 games over 20, 8 over 10. He had 6 games under 10 points.
Hmm.
Which, if you look at the top 20 running backs in the NFL last year, he was the highest for all 20 for most games under 10 points.
Okay.
And so you get the camp hype coming out of Miami, and they're talking about how he's just going to be amazing and he's a 2,000-yard player and all this stuff. And maybe. I will say the talent is there, the O-line is there. We'll just have to wait and see how it's going to go. But I'll be honest with you, he's got too many bad games for me. He's such a home run play. So in best ball leagues, go get Jay Ajayi. But in standard, I don't know. I want to pump the brakes a little bit. So that's why he's at the very end of my tier.
There's another guy who I kind of wonder about because he's kind of getting up there. I mean, he's been around since Brian Westbrook and Deuce Staley. I mean, his rookie year.
I already know who you're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, my old boy, Shady McCoy, love him, but can he keep it going? I mean, he's phenomenal, but again, I mean, he's getting close to 30, I believe.
Man, I absolutely adore LaShawn McCoy. And one of the main reasons why I like him so much is who else do they have? They were starting to lean as the year went on more and more on Gillislee, and then the Patriots stole him from him. And so now what do they have? They have Jonathan Williams behind him, who's a converted cornerback from Texas A&M. And I mean, he can play, and I do like him, but they don't have anybody else to give the ball to. And then on top of that, I mean, they have a running quarterback in place with Tyrod Taylor. And so what this does is it totally opens up all lanes that he has, which is awesome. And it just the sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah.
If you look at all of his seasons, so since 2009, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years over 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah.
His touchdown totals: 13, He got injured and only had 3 in 2015, 5, 9, 17, 7. I mean, the guy can ball out, and he's just as clutch as you can be.
Yeah.
Whenever he plays, now the one thing I will say this, because I've had Shady in some of my leagues, he's scary to own and watch the games because there's about 2 to 3 times a game where he limps off the field holding his shoulder or his ankle or whatever, and he'll play through it. But man, your heart stops. You're just like, oh no, not now, not now. But I love Shady. That boy's a beast.
Yeah, last year I was fortunate to own Shady and David Johnson on the same team. It was a good year. Uh,
That's
so
so.
that's that second tier. Is Marshawn Lynch in that next tier? Is he somewhere in there?
So I like Marshawn Lynch, and I think that in redraft leagues, man, go get him. I have him ranked as my number 17 running back this year, so he's going to be an RB2. And whenever I say RB2, usually the standard league has 12 teams, so the top 12 running backs are RB1s. The next 12, 13 through 24 are RB2s, so on and so forth. And so I have him in kind of my fourth tier, but at the bottom. And I think he's going to be great. I really, really do. If you look at what Latavius Murray did there last year, he had 12 touchdowns. Latavius Murray, who I don't think anybody is really high on.
No,
And so if you give those same amount of carries that Latavius had to Marshawn, oh my goodness. You just he's going to be basically, if you average out what Marshawn Lynch has done with his career, or just the last 2 years, not even his career, he averaged 4.3 yards. So if you just give all of the carries that Latavius got to Marshawn, you're looking at basically 946 yards with 14 touchdowns, which brings him to the number 10 running back. Now, I'm not sure he's going to get all those carries. I know they really like Jalen Richard that they're going to use at third down. And I don't really know if Marshawn is back completely. You take a year off of football.
Well, too, wouldn't you say that his ranking is that low because also he's old and he's got
really
some
old.
injuries?
He's got a lot of injuries. It's been 3 years since he's produced at an elite level. Now, I will say this. He has never played behind an offensive line like he has now. Oakland Raiders offensive line is legit, but they throw the ball a lot there. The one thing that is safe about him is when they get into the goal line, they run the ball. So his touchdown total is going to be a lot higher than his yardage totals. Again, best ball, super cheap get. Absolutely love the dude.
Those Raiders are going to be – that offense is going to be something.
It's going to be something for a while. With the contract they just gave Derek Carr, like they've got a lot of young talent that's going to be there for a while. So I'm excited for him.
I'm happy for the Carr family because I always liked Houston because I actually thought he could play. He was the opposite. He didn't have an offensive line, and at one point in time, he was the most sacked quarterback in NFL history. So, shout out.
I think he's the first NFL player to have PTSD. To be honest with you, like I think he needs to be checked.
Again, I was rooting for him the whole time. So yeah, you got the Raiders going. They got Marshawn Lynch, so it's going to be an interesting year. I see in your rankings that you have McCaffrey over Fournette.
Yeah, McCaffrey, I love that kid, man.
That is tough for me because Jonathan Stewart is still with the Panthers, and Fournette, he's got Yeldon and Chris Ivory. I guess that's going to be a pretty formidable crew, but I don't foresee them not giving Fournette the bulk of the carries from week one.
Yeah. And now I'll say this. I have them back to back. So I have McCaffrey at 15 and Fournette at 16. So I like them both. And they're in the same tier. However, I hate that offense for the Jags. And you add in Tom Coughlin. I know he's not the head coach, but I really think that is just going to be slowed down and just pound the ball.
Yeah.
Now, here's my thing. If McCaffrey came into the NFL as a wide receiver, I would have had him ranked as the number 4 wide receiver in the entire draft. Wow. The kid is special. And so I'm going talent and opportunity. Man, they both have talent, but I edge McCaffrey. And I think the opportunity's better. I really do because, again, as I mentioned before with LaShawn McCoy, when you have a running quarterback, the running lanes just get bigger. That's all there is to it. It changes it. And if you look at the offense that we have for the Jags, all of their points come in garbage time because they are always down because Blake Bortles, no offense, is not an NFL quarterback. Pretty good fantasy quarterback, not a good NFL quarterback. So when the Jags are down by 14 points in the fourth quarter, is that time to run the ball with Fournette? So
Right.
I think he's going to be playing 3 quarters, and he is not a great receiving back. TJ Yeldon will be the receiving back in Jacksonville. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I am rooting on Bortles. I do think he can turn it around. I think that last year he looked like a guy who was confused and lost and had the tools and, guys around him, and he still was failing. But I do think, I believe that the sophomore slumps are real, or the junior, whatever. I'll give him 3 years too. But I'm
So
pulling him. But
I don't want to let you off the hook here. I feel like there needs to be a bet made somewhere here. So let's just look at Blake Bortles' numbers, okay? So for his career, he has 69 touchdown passes versus 51 interceptions, okay? Now, he has never done this. Just a basic measure for hey, are you a decent quarterback? Is a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So in 2015, he had 35 touchdown passes and 18 interceptions, as close as you can get. So he's had 3 years. Would you be willing to make a bet? I don't care what it is, whether it's a bottle of Jameson or whatever, that this year he has a positive touchdown to interception ratio, 2 touchdowns for every interception. Would you be willing to make that bet?
I'm going to make a different bet. Okay.
Okay, let's hear it.
You said a good NFL quarterback, and
I'm trying to trick you here.
Are not necessarily measured in their stats. Sometimes it's, they're sacrificing for the run or whatever. And sometimes, it's the quality of the playmaking and the maybe not the volume. So what I'm going to say is I will bet you that the Jags, they're going to come in second in their division, but I think they're going to go 9-7.
So, all right, pick one of those things. I'll make either bet, but I want this to be recorded. So whether they finish second or they get to 9 wins, you pick, and I will agree with either one of those.
I'm going to go with second place.
Second place? Oh, God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir.
Here we go. Not feeling great about it already, but okay.
And so what are we betting here? A bottle of Jameson?
I think we can do better than that. We'll do a bottle of 20-year scotch.
Holy cow, you're my good friend. 18 is going to be easier to find, but let's make it happen, man. I like this.
All right, so let's move on from that bet. I'm scared about it. And
I love it. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers. Let's go into the dark horse. Who is the guy who is going to get you a ton of value into the later rounds?
Okay, so I am huge on Ameer Abdullah, and I know a lot of people were really high on him last year, and then he got injured the very first game, and I get that. I have him ranked as my number 19 running back, which is it's pretty early. Every league that I've already taken place in this year, whether it's an MFL 10, whether it's redraft or dynasty, I'm getting him in every league. They have upgraded their offensive line big time. 2 Pro Bowlers added to that with Wagner and the right tackle from the Ravens. Now, if you look at that offense, they throw the ball so much. You cannot load the box. And he can catch the ball very, very well. So I'm really, really excited about him. If you go back and watch the All or Nothing with the Arizona Cardinals on Amazon from 2 years ago, and they're in the draft room, and with the second pick or their second round pick, they call up Ameer Abdullah and they're like, "Hey, we just picked you, Ameer. We're so glad to have you at the Cardinals." And he's like, "Oh, coach, Detroit's on the line with me, and they're the pick before you. They just picked me." And so you saw how devastated these 2 guys were, the GM, Steve Keem, and Bruce Arians. They were just like, "Oh, damn, what do we do now?" And so they passed on running back in the second round. Guess who they picked in the third round? None other than David Johnson. Worked out great. But it shows you that these guys were willing to take a round earlier before David Johnson, this Ameer Abdullah. He's got the talent. He's just got to put it together to stay on the field.
Okay.
Stop fumbling the damn ball, but I think he's got somewhere to go.
So on the other end of that, who's the guy who's, just being talked about too much and he's too high in the rankings?
Man, I'd probably say Spencer Ware, who I like. I like him a lot as a player, but it seems like the Kansas City Chiefs don't like him as a player. Um, they went out and they traded up for Kamar Hunt in the third, and I absolutely love Kamar Hunt's game. He's never fumbled a ball. We'll get into him. But Spencer Ware's average draft position is at the 14th running back. So he's a high-end RB2 according to basically where everybody is taking him. Now, I have him basically at 18. So I guess I'm down about 5 spots on him. But if you look at what he did last year, like he's never really had just a giant year. He finished at 17 last year, but he had some huge holes in his game. He missed a few games. Um, and if you look at these are his last 3 games: 7 points, 12 points, 10 points. And that's in a PPR. And so he had that huge blow up game in week 1, but after that, I don't know. I just don't think there's much there for upside. And when you look at Kareem Hunt out of Toledo, man, that guy is just an absolute beast. He's a poor man's Frank Gore and does a little bit of everything. He's one of those guys, not like Bryant Westbrook in the fact of how shifty or fast he is, but he's an all around back. And we saw what Andy Reid can do with a guy like that. Just put him back there and just keep him there. And he does everything. And so I really think eventually Kareem Hunt's going to take over.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to move into a segment where we analyze a division out of the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to start with none other than the greatest division, at least rivalry-wise, in the NFL and the NFC East. It's my.
You're not biased.
I'm not biased, okay? But before I do that, John, I'm going to throw you a curveball.
All right.
If our listeners wanted to see your tier rankings, how would they be able to do that? Would that be accessible to if you posted it to Twitter, or how would they get that?
Yeah, so here's the deal. I'm going to put it out on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is JL_Chapman. That's CHAPMAN. So I'm going to put that out there on Twitter. And I'll put a link on there and I'll put the picture on there so that you can get access to it. So again, that's JL_Chapman. So check that out. And again, if you ever have anything that you want us to talk about on the show, questions, trades, whatever, just send that over there and we'll be happy to incorporate it in the show.
Perfect. All right, so let's get into the NFC East. I think we're just going to take a look at some predictions here and could just kind of talk about the division. So,
all right, let's switch roles because I want to hear what you got to say, man. Who is going to be the winner? Actually, you know what? Let's start at the bottom because I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan and we've been terrible lately.
Yeah.
Who is going to finish last place in the NFC East this year?
Redskins, hands down.
Yeah, I got them last place too. Why do you think? Why? I mean, they won the division a year ago. They've got the quarterback. They've got the offense. Why do you not like them?
Well, they've changed receivers around, and I think that Pryor has an amazing upside, but he's not locked for me because he's not a polished guy per se. And the Browns just spent a ton of time with him on developing him. Now he's going to a brand new system. We'll see. I think he'll do well. He's also going to be competing for numbers too. But the defense, nothing about it is dominant. That defense gets walked on. They're sort of like an NBA player who scores points in meaningless games. Like there's sometimes that there's stats that are there, but
so they're the James Hardy of the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like I don't believe in their defenses out of all of the defenses in the division. They're ahead of the Cowboys, but the Cowboys are that offense is something else. But yeah, Redskins and an unhappy Kirk Cousins, mind you.
Oh, I'm hoping. I hope he's super sad, which this is an important week for 49ers fans because if he doesn't sign his contract extension by this week, they can't negotiate with him till the end of the season. So he'll play on the franchise tag, and then it's open bidding, and the 49ers have the most cap room in the entire NFL. So we are getting him.
he's a fool if he signs it and has to work with Schneider. So get out of
Worst
there.
front office in the entire NFL, and that's saying a lot.
Absolutely. So moving into number 3, and this is going to be controversial, but I got the Cowboys. And
Oh, you got to do it. I love it.
as an Eagles fan, I'm sure that everybody else is tripping out on that. Okay, and I get you because it's a very talented team. To me, best offensive line in the league. Tyron Smith is. I haven't seen a guy like him in a very long time. He's once in a generation kind of player. Zeke, I got to give him credit. He's awesome. Dak, I'm not sold on. I think that he
I
only works
love
tonight
Dak,
at the
man.
SB.
I
People are gonna,
love Dak.
yeah, people are going to question that. But here's the deal: I never saw Dak get to a ton of reads, especially early on in his few games. I saw him develop a little bit later on, but he's also sitting back there with the most cushiony offensive line you've ever seen, with the offensive weapons that people pray for. And they did what they did, and he stepped up to the plate. But I'm not sure, with Cooper at guard, Collins newly at right tackle, and a defense that has fallen off the face of the earth, been traded away, left in free agency, or has been suspended.
That's the thing I was looking at. If you look at how many people they've had suspended the last few years, it's unreal. Their defense got so much worse, which they were opportunistic last year. They played pretty well defensively, but this year, yeah, I've got Cowboys finishing number 2, but they're up for regression. They're not going to do what they did last year. Just can't happen.
Their schedule is so brutal, and you're without your best pass rusher in Nate Irving. You got other future suspensions that could be possibly on the way.
Yeah.
This is in trouble, I think. But that offensive line could save them. A dominant offensive line might get them, but I still don't see them being better than the Eagles or Giants.
I got you. So who do you have at number 2, man? The runners up.
Number 2, the Birds are flying high, making
Oh,
our way. I think Wentz definitely has a better season. I could see a few more picks for him. I think the sophomore slump is real. But
and it depends on which wins do you get. If you look at his stats in the first 4 weeks, he had 3 games above 100 passer rating. Weeks 5 through 16, not one. Not one. In fact, he had 1 game above 90 after that. And so, I'm sorry, 2 weeks 16, he had another game. So, I don't know. I love Carson Wentz, and I think long term he's going to be great. I'm curious to see what he can do with Lane Johnson back, because I don't know how much of that was contributed to losing one of the best right tackles in the league.
I was just about to say, you're going to see the Carson Wentz, hopefully, with one of the best offensive lines in football. And
hey, PFF, they put you guys at the number 1 offensive line for the 2017 season. So
crazy to me. I don't agree with it, but I do love it. But instead of just talking about Lane Johnson, let me talk about who, Big V, or Vitae, if anybody knows him, the right tackle. People were literally just like celebrating as a defensive end when they knew they got to go up against this guy. He wreaked havoc. And then there were other injuries, and we were just getting obliterated with no run game, no our wide receivers had the most drops, second most drops in the league. Ridiculous.
It was bad last year, man. Talk about upgrading a wide receiver core, though. Good Lord.
Torrey, Alshon, and now Jordan Matthews are your starters, when Jordan Matthews was your number 1 last year, and the most underrated, in LeGarrette Blount, behind a good offensive line, mixed in with Sproles.
I love it, man.
Yeah, and that defense. Now here's I'll give the caveat. Here's how the Cowboys could get to 2 and Eagles to 3. The Eagles are at weakest at one of the most important position groups that there is, and that's cornerbacks, because this is a passing league. So with that said, their defense is to be respected. To me, it's the best defensive line in football, hands down. That's just me. They have a great safety tandem. They've got great linebackers, but those corners could get work done. So
yeah, we'll see, man. Hopefully Who's the guy you guys got out of Washington that I absolutely loved? He tore his Achilles at his pro day.
Are you talking about our defensive line or no? Oh,
Oh,
Sidney.
your corner. Oh yeah, Sidney Jones. Absolutely love that kid.
Also, too, we got. I was thinking of Qualls, who that kid. He looks tiger-like. He looks like a leopard when he's down there. He moves around so quick, and it's interesting. So, I'm thinking he might make the roster. So,
I have also been described as being tiger-like several times.
yeah,
So I'm just saying.
in different ways.
Little bit.
So, at number one's the Giants, and
Same. I have them number one as well.
You know, their only weakness, which is a very important one, which will keep them from winning a Super Bowl, is their offensive line. You don't win Super Bowls with Beatty at left guard. You don't win Super Bowls with, let me take that back, not just with Beatty, but other weak guys.
They're terrible. They're terrible. And Eli's awful. He's played really bad, except for when he throws it to Odell. But I believe they have the best defense in the entire NFL. Like, I got them number one overall defensively. And so that's got to go a ways, man.
I know. That's what I was going to say. So they're monsters. Their defense gives us problems, the Eagles specifically. Our offense, though, gives them problems, which is weird. So you know how it is. Inter-division rivalries and that play is different because they know each other so well. But yeah, so I got Giants number one, and I'm hoping that the Eagles can pull a wild card. So there's my predictions. Do you disagree with any of my predictions?
The only thing I had the Cowboys and Eagles switched. I had Giants 1, Cowboys 2, Eagles 3, Redskins 4, and a Redskins big time 4. But tough division, man. Whoever gets out of this, unless it's the Cowboys, will do well in playoffs. Cowboys never do well in playoffs. Ask DeAngelo Williams.
Yeah, DeAngelo Williams. Jeez. All right, man. So this has been episode 1. And this is just what we do, man. We talk football, and we love fantasy football. So, I'll probably do a mock draft directly after this.
That's right. That's what we do, man. And next episode up, we got receivers.
Receivers. Position group I have struggled with my whole entire fantasy football career. It's the toughest one for me. Glad to hear that we're going to do something about it. But again, for your rankings, if people want to see your rankings, what is your Twitter handle?
So Twitter handle is JL_Chapman, CHAPMAN. Check that out and go ahead, and we are on iTunes. So subscribe to iTunes. That way when we upload a new episode to pop right up there, and give us a review. Let us know whether good or bad, what you think, and any recommendations on Twitter are always welcome.
Peace out.
Peace.